please pray with me? God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation in each heart be acceptable in your sight, for you are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So we begin, and so we end. We end our Lenten journey, and we begin the journey to crucifixion. This marks the beginning of what is referred to as Holy Week, and that means we are on a very sacred journey with Jesus. And at the very beginning of this Holy Week, now this is recorded in all the Gospels, but a little differently in some. You might remember in some of the Gospels they say palms were thrown, which is why you're seeing all the palms on the floor. We call it Palm Sunday. And in this Gospel, particularly, Luke says cloaks were put on the ground. So I want to give you a little bit of background, because as this was happening, the people of Jesus' time saw great significance in each and everything that was being done. First of all, and it still blows me away that people would just let someone take their colt and walk away with it, but, God handles things like that. So it starts off by Jesus not walking into Jerusalem, but riding. And he rides on a colt. We're told a colt that has never been ridden. Some of the Gospels say a donkey. Makes no difference, because the significance is absolutely the same. When a ruler, a king, came into the city, if they came as a conqueror, they came as someone who demanded authority. If they came in violence, they rode a big horse and they had armor and all of that. And people knew. People knew when Rome sent an emissary, it would always be on a large war horse, and they would be coming in. But if the ruler came in peace, they always rode a donkey, not a war horse. A donkey or a colt. And so here we have significance number one. Jesus comes in, and remember, people have already called him King of the Jews. Many people had come to him and said, "You are the Messiah we've been waiting for. You are going to free us." Not understanding what Jesus' true mission was. And so he was making it very clear. I'm coming in peace, not to overthrow anyone. I'm not coming to wage war. I'm coming to set you free. And people yet did not understand. This particular version of the story has Jesus coming in, and instead of just a crowd of nobodies and whoever's, we're told it was a multitude of Jesus' disciples, followers of Jesus. Now, we think of the disciples as just usually the apostles, the 12. But let me tell you, there were many people who followed Jesus. And there's one little thing in this story that just jumps out at me as significant. Because it says two of the Pharisees, the elite of the temple, were in the crowd. And I know they were disciples of Jesus because of the way they addressed him. Teacher, Rabbi, you need to tell the people to be quiet. Now, they did this not because they didn't like the people cheering. In fact, they may have even been part of the cheering. Excuse me. They did it because they knew what was happening. You see, Jesus had done one huge miracle that pushed everybody over the top. One thing on top of everything else. I mean, he had been changing water to wine and casting out demons and healing the deaf and giving the blind sight, and all that was cool. People were kind of, okay, fine. But when you raise someone from the dead, that's an issue. His friend Lazarus had died. Not only had Lazarus died, Lazarus had been buried. And he'd been in the tomb for 4 days when Jesus came and said, "Oh, no, he's not dead." Now, that would have just like, excuse me, we buried him, we know he's dead. And in fact, one of the sisters says, yes, he is dead, he smells. Yeah. And Jesus said, "No, he's just sleeping." And walks over, has the entrance stone removed and says, come forth, and Lazarus gets up and walks out. And I'm thinking then he didn't smell, but I don't know. That doesn't say that in Scripture. You see, there were so many friends of Mary and Martha and Lazarus that were there for the funeral, basically. It was a celebration morning that went on days after the person was buried. And so they were all there. So it didn't take long, excuse me, for the word to get back to all the scribes, the Pharisees, and the priests. And so these Pharisees knew, you are in so much trouble. The very last thing you want to do is create a riot out here with all these people screaming and yelling. But Jesus' answer, I think we kind of gloss over it maybe sometime. Jesus said, if I tell them to be quiet, then the stones are going to shout out. I don't know about you, but to me, that is the great, great significance of the power of Jesus Christ. He knew if the people were quiet, creation, the stones, creation would cry out. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. Power. The power of love. See, that was Jesus' power. Not an army, although he could have amassed an army with just a word. People were ready to follow him. No, his power was in love. I'm preparing to take a class this summer, and I was reading some books. And one of them was all about the latest statistics about churches in the United States. Now, here's the truth of it, people. Every single mainline denomination is deteriorating, losing members left and right. All of them, no exceptions. Now, some of the more, if you will call them, charismatic, conservative, like Church of God, they're growing, but not that much. What, in fact, is happening is a phenomenon that we've seen here, and I believe all churches have seen everywhere. We have wonderful people in our churches. But now I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I want you to look around. Just look around at everybody. Go ahead, look around. Look around. Look around. So, most of the people you're looking at, the majority of the people you are looking at, are, ready for this, over 50 years of age. Oh no, don't say some of them. No. Don't some of you shake your heads. I know who you are and I know how old you are. So what's happening is young people, and I'm saying young under 50, which is really a push, but anyway, young people are not coming to church. And this book gave lots of reasons and lots of different things to look at, but I centered in on one thing. The church today, and not just our church, all churches, not just Christian churches, synagogues are experiencing the same kind of thing we are. They're not relevant. They're not relevant to today. And that means we're not willing to talk about the stuff that's going on around us. And I've said this before, but you know, I really need to say it again because I believe we have the potential here in this church and in MCC. MCC is starting on a new road with a new moderator being elected this summer. I know some of the things that have already been talked about. I know we're going to be doing things differently. But here's what we need to know. We need to do things differently. We need to be different people. We need to latch on to the power of love. Because here's what's happened to the church. And again, I'm talking about the church universal. Not picking on any denomination. We've taken the power of the love of Jesus Christ. The love that Jesus modeled. And right up until he died on the cross, he was modeling it. Forgive them, he said. They don't know what they're doing. He looked at the bandits that were on the crosses next to him. And he said, today you'll be with me in paradise. To the one that said, save me. You see, that's the power of the love of Jesus. So then what happened? Just like happens in so many other things, including politics today, it ceases to be about love and respect. It ceases to be about honoring our fellow human beings. It becomes a personal agenda, whatever it might be. And that's what churches have done. If you look at the history of the church since Jesus' resurrection, which it kind of began then, really, you read a lot of it in the Acts of the Apostles, that's the early church. They already had arguments. They had it then. You might remember the story. Peter arguing with Paul the evangelist, Peter the, I'm still a Jew, we're doing everything the Jewish way. God had to deal with Peter, which God did. You'll hear that story later. But anyway, so here's what the church decides to do. The church establishes the insiders and the outsiders from minute one of its existence. To be a part of this church, you have to be bum, 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 bum. Oh, all kinds of requirements in different churches, right? All kinds of requirements. And so what we've done over the centuries is, why do you think we have so many Protestant churches? Because some of the outsiders didn't like being outsiders, so they started their own church, but then they made their own insiders and outsiders. And then another group started, and then another group started, and then another group. In the United States, there are, I'm not going to remember the number because it blew me away when I read it, but like almost 1,000 or over 1,000 different Christian denominations. Same God, same Jesus. What's the difference? Oh, let's talk about it just for a minute. It's about how you do communion. It's about how you dress. It's about the songs you sing. It's about who you are as a person. It's who you live with, how you live, if you're married, if you're divorced. Oh my goodness, we could go on and on. That's not the power of love. That's the power of judgment. That's what people are doing. And we do it too. Let's be honest right now. Let's confess. Every single one of us in this room is prejudiced. Some way, somehow. I'll tell you. I do not understand people who do not love dogs and cats. I think there's something fundamentally different about them. And I am suspicious of them. No. Actually, I don't understand why they don't. But see, this is just one of the things, you know. And it's so interesting to me that we can't just say, you know, how we live is how we live. Okay? As long as we're good people, as long as we're not killing anybody, beating anybody, taking advantage of anybody, as long as we're not stealing. You know, we're trying to live the life we know God wants us to live. And past that, we have an obligation to hold on, grab, encompass, put it inside of us, the power of the love of Jesus. And that means, get ready for it, that means you love people in spite of who they are. You love people even if they don't love dogs and cats. You love people if they look differently from you, they live differently from you, they act differently from you. You see, if we could just, and I'm saying we, not only our church, got to start here though, if we could really be love to people, not be judgment to people, if we could, you know, none of us is perfect. None of us is perfect. And we all, as Scripture says, fall short of what we know we're supposed to be doing. But it's not about being perfect. It's about doing everything we do in love. Everything. And how does that translate to our everyday life? I think for each one of us it's different. Because let's face it, many of us have to deal with people we don't even like. So how do we love them? How do we love them? See, that's the beauty of it. Stay with me because that's the beauty of it. We love them through Jesus Christ. We try to look at people with God's eyes, not with ours.
And if we can start doing that, and it's hard. The disciples couldn't do it. And they had Jesus right there with them, and they couldn't do it. But we have to try. You see, I believe that the reason we have all the things happening in the world today is because of this whole insider-outsider mentality. Who's good and who's not? Who deserves and who doesn't? Who we need to punish and how we need to punish them. I just don't believe there's anything valuable about living like this. And I look around the world, and yes, there are lots of things happening around the world, but I want you to look at it. Just look at the news sometime. Of course, you'll see a lot of stuff. Read a newspaper. Go online. And I want you to look at it with the eyes of love. And I want you to look down and say, why is this happening? And then see it's because someone doesn't love somebody else. They don't love their religion. They don't love where they are. They don't love what they have. It's about not loving. Now, I could say it's about greed and power, all that kind of stuff. It's about not loving people. And there is not a religion on the face of this earth, none, that doesn't talk about love. So we are very quick to judge other religions. But if you do some research, if you look down to the heart of those religions, they have the same God we do. We have the same God we do. Hear that? The same God we do. They can call God by different names. They can worship God in different ways. But it is the same creator of the universe that we all worship. And I am positive because Jesus said it. I'm positive because Jesus was God walking down on earth, giving us an example by his life and his words. I know it, I believe it because Jesus said it. Love one another. Jesus said you don't have to worry about all the rules and regulations of Judaism, and there are lots. You only have to worry about two things. You need to love God completely, and you need to love your neighbor as yourself. Isn't that love? The power of love. Now I know that all of us are going to have the same kind of difficulties that the disciples had. We're going to have our prejudices. We're going to have the people we like and don't like. We're going to have the people we trust and don't trust. We have the people who surprise us and lie to us to get us places. She will never live it down as long as she said. Anyway. But we have those things in our lives. We do. But if we can look past, and I love you, we can look past everything and we can look to love. I believe it's the beginning, not the end. It's the beginning of changing our world. Because our world cannot change until each individual on this planet changes. And this church, hear me, this church is destined to be the lighthouse for this community. To be the example of everybody's welcome. Everybody is loved here. Everyone is respected here. Now, there are other churches who say it right here in this community. And I hope they're trying as hard as I hope we're going to be trying to do it. But I believe we have as our foundation something very important. We are a church that was founded because one man, Troy Perry, knew God loved him, knew it with his heart, soul, and mind, and knew that he had to share that love with other people who were just like him, who had felt he was kicked out of his church, who felt ostracized and left out. He took it upon himself. One man took it upon himself. And because God spoke to him and said, Troy, you're my son. I have no one that's not my son or daughter. You're all mine. When he started
this church, Metropolitan Community Churches in California, he literally began saving lives. He took people from the brink of suicide and he brought them to God. You see, this is the power of love. There is nothing that can come against us that God will not protect us. There is nothing that is impossible with God. And why? Because God is the power of love. I said we call God by all kinds of different names on this planet. But whatever the name is, I think we can just call that God love. Love, love. In all the different languages, we can just call God love. And for each and every one of us, what's going to make a difference in our lives, in our church, in our community, in our state, and in our world, is if every decision we make is founded on and compared with love. Every single decision. Very important. That you don't do anything, you don't say anything, you don't spend money on anything, you don't do anything until you say, how is this showing the power of God's love? And if you can't honestly say it is, then don't do it. Don't do it. I am an impatient driver. Anyone who's been in the car with me may know this. You know, I really, because I did driver's ed when I was in high school, and we learned everything we were supposed to know. And I passed my driving test on the very first time, and yes, my friends, I can parallel park to this day. I can go downtown St. Augustine, and everyone passes a spot, and I pull in it. Because I learned how to parallel park. But I get impatient. And I see people on the interstate, where the speed limit is 70, by the way. I do about 75 sometimes. Passing me like I'm standing still. I've seen people literally this week run off the road by someone on the interstate. Thank goodness that person was in great control, went over to the side, managed to get back on safely. You see, you don't love people when you put them in danger. You don't love people when you're not respectful of the way they drive and the way you drive. I mean, that's just an example that we're all going to encounter today, because probably every single one of us is going to get in the car to get home. Unless, of course, you're camping, then, of course, you walk over there. But still, so I want you to think about that when you're driving. It might be a great place to start. Love everyone on the road, even if they're not driving quite like they should. Say, God loves you, and so do I. And you might have to bite your tongue when you say it. But that's okay. Because we're going to have to bite our tongues a lot if we're going to change this world. We're going to have to do that time and time again. And so, my friends, the power of the love is ours. Why? Jesus gave it to us. Jesus gave it to us. Jesus died on the cross for us. Jesus showed us what love is all about. And we owe Jesus a great debt. Not only for our salvation, but for the wonderful example of what it means to love. So I ask you, my friends, I have to tell you a little story about that child. Amber. Hi, baby girl. How are you? It was time for communion a few weeks ago. And you know, we go in a line. Amber was down, further down the line. I was serving communion. And there she was. Come here. Now, if you know Amber, you know she'll eat anything, so it was pretty much, yeah. But I thought to myself, and Elizabeth actually said it out loud to me, she said, what if all of us were that eager for the body and blood of Jesus? What if every single one of us couldn't wait to receive that example, that remembrance of what love is all about? You know, children can teach us a lot. And here's the one thing I know. When they're tiny little people, and we have several tiny little people, they love everybody. They don't see the color of skin. They don't see any differences. They don't even see men and women. They see people they love. I think we could learn a lot Please pray with me. God, we ask you right now to give us an extra measure of the power of your love. We ask you to show us in everything we do, in every moment of our day or night, how we need to act to be love. And God, be patient with us, because we're not going to be good at this at first, but we want to try, and we need your help. In Jesus' name.